It is not uncommon for me to read 3 or 4 books at the same time. Not like sitting at one time, but I'll be reading 3 or 4 different books over the course of the same period of time. I like all kinds of books: action, adventure, mystery, sci-fi, especially sci-fi, nonfiction, biographies. I even read textbooks. Yes, I have textbooks at home that I read. And I love reading the Bible especially. And it has almost everything that I like to read all in one book. And it's also a great textbook. I mean, think about it. The Bible contains history, it's got sociology in it, and it's got lots of science. Science? Yes. The Bible actually has a lot of science in it. It's actually chock full of statements that are in line with what we know as scientific fact. Matter of fact, if you go through the Bible, you'll find paleontology, astronomy, meteorology, anthropology, geology, physics, hydrology, biology, and that's just to name a few. It's all in the Bible. All right? And you know what gets me, what's really funny about it is when you're reading the Bible, this was written how long ago? And we're just now verifying the facts of it. You know, it's only within the last 100 years, and a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about today, just within the last 20 years, that we've been able to actually verify and expand on. But the purpose of today is for me not to explain how great a science text the Bible is, but how consistent it is with some of the facts that we have today. Now, the Bible does mention some things that we can't explain. But if God is God, and He is, He's bound to have some things that we just can't explain. Okay? Now, since these things that we're going to talk about support the Bible, we can understand that scientifically and spiritually, we should trust the Bible, even for those things that we don't understand. But today, specifically, I want to talk about your brain and your thought life. How many people actually have given thought to what they think about it? I recently read a couple of great books. One of them is a textbook called A Rough Guide to the Human Brain. That one was actually really good. Memory in the Brain, which is another textbook that I read that I liked. But I read a biographical book, an autobiographical book. Let me make sure I pronounce her name right. By Jill Bolt Taylor, who is actually a brain doctor. She specializes in the brain. And what made this book so amazing, it's called My Stroke of Insight. And it tells the story of when she actually had a stroke in the left side of her brain, the left hemisphere of her brain. She literally had a blood vessel that ruptured, and she bled out the left side of her brain. And she explains in her book what happened to her through the stroke, what she was thinking. Because of her knowledge of the brain, she realized what was happening while it was happening to her. And then it goes through her entire recovery and how she ended up getting back 100% recovery. It took her some time, 8 years for 100%, but she was functional within a few months. And then within 8 years, gained it all back, 100% recovery. That's incredible. So this got me thinking as I was reading all these books, and it got me thinking about our thought life. You know, and as I look around, I see the news and just the people I talk to. You know, for some reason, I have become the go-to person for any problem at work that happens in this line of business. I'm sure pastors can agree. You get a lot of people that come and talk to you. And just watching TV and the news and listening to people on the street and people talking to each other on their cell phones with their little things in their ears, and they're talking to the whole world to hear their conversation. All I see is all the stress, the depression, the lack of self-worth, and the negativity that's all around us. That's what people always talking about. They're dwelling on it. But my question is that how you're meant to be? Is that the kind of life that the Bible says you're supposed to have? Now, the Bible says that Jesus came so we could have a better and more abundant life. So why are so many of us not living that life? And I'm not talking about money. Yeah, money's nice. I wish I had more too. A lot more. A lot more. But that's not what I mean by having an abundant life. You can have a good life and not have a lot of money. So why are not more Christians living this way? Aren't we the example? So as I'm studying and reading all these books, a lot of studies that I came across show that anywhere between 87 to 95% of the illnesses that plague us today are a direct result of our thought life. How we think affects us physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So we have an epidemic out there, an epidemic of, for lack of a better term, I'm borrowing this one from one of the doctor's books I read called Who Switched Off My Brain. She calls it an epidemic of toxic thinking. And it's causing us to separate ourselves from the things of God. So I'm going to soak in a little bit. A medical research increasingly points to the fact that thinking and consciously controlling your thought life is one, if not the best way to detoxify your brain. It allows you to get rid of these toxic type of thoughts and emotions that can consume you and start to control the way you think. And after a while, that's always how you go. How many of you know somebody that's like Eeyore? Everywhere they go, it doesn't matter. They could win the lottery today, and they would just be upset about how they have to deal with all the cash. You know, how many people do you know that could use a change of thought, a change of mindset? How many of us could use a change of thought, a change of mindset? I know there was a point in my life when I needed it. In the Bible, Hosea states in 4:6 that my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. So today I'm going to try to give you some knowledge, something to think about, to help us all have what God intended. First and foremost, you need to realize, and I said it last time I was up here, and I'll probably say it every time I'm up here, you are a miracle of creation. The more I read, the science that I study, the anatomy and physiology of the brain, I'm like really hooked on that right now, so I've got a whole bunch of books still lined up to read on it. The more I study about the world around us, the more I realize how much love and care went into our creation and everything else around us. Do you realize that you are the greatest creation in the universe? Because you're the only one that was created in the image of God. Think about that. Yeah, say it again, Liz. That's right. You're his masterpiece. There's nothing out there that's better than you are. So, you are in fact wonderfully made. So let's talk about this creation for a minute. I'm going to talk about your brain. First of all, your brain is about the size of your two fists put together. Maybe a little bigger for some of us. Maybe a lot bigger, I don't know. Okay? It consists of over 100 billion nerve cells. Can you even fathom that number? 100 billion nerve cells. By the way, nerve cells are different different than other cells. You know how other cells in your body regenerate themselves and they die off and regenerate? Nerve cells don't do that. You're born with all these nerve cells and they stay there unless you don't feed them properly or something happens to destroy them. Your brain does over 400 billion transactions per second. That's pretty cool. And on average, you're only conscious, if we sat down and wrote them all down, of only 2,000. By the time you wrote them down, how many billion transactions happen? Science has shown that our brains, if we were able to totally utilize them, have the capacity for 3 million years worth of memory space. For us computer geeks, that's pretty cool. Would you like to have a hard drive like that one? And that's considered a low-ball estimate. I'd like to think mine has more. No processor in the world, no computer system has yet matched what the human brain is capable of doing. Your brain is the most complex cross-reference database ever designed. Even now, while I'm speaking to you, your mind is cross-referencing all over the place. The right side of your mind is taking in all the colors right now that are in the room, all the lines that you see, while the left side of your mind is giving you your depth perception, working with the back part of your brain where your vision is. And all this is happening. While I'm talking to you, part of you is seeing my mouth move and figuring out what's coming out of my mouth. The other part, the left side of your brain, is actually taking the words that are coming out from the sound receptors that are coming from your ear on the sides of the brain, on the outside. That's where your sound is. They're working together with the part in the Wernicke, or I don't know. It's a section of the brain that processes language. All this is happening at one time. I purposely wore all gray so you have something to cross-reference today too. Something that you can attach today's memory to. Because when you attach memories to other things, they build upon themselves and they last longer and they're more embedded into your brain. So I purposely wore one solid color. And I thought it was really cool at the time I was doing, so I just had it along. So just with that alone, that little bit of information I just gave you, do you really believe that millions of years ago you crawled out of goo? Accidents don't create the miracle that you want. Can you go ahead and put the first slide up? So we're going to have a little class today. And it's really cool because I've got like a bunch of these little laser pointers and I never get to use them. So I figured out a reason to use one today. So this is your human brain. Okay, obviously this is the right hemisphere, but I needed to show you the inside, so we cut it in half. This section back here works your vision. On the outside of the brain, if I was showing you the outside, that's where your sound is. This is the frontal lobe. That's really important in what we're going to talk about today and how it works with your thought life. This right here, the hypothalamus and the thalamus, these two work together. They're the chemical processing plants that make the different chemicals and hormones that work in your body. It creates the dopamine, the serotonin, the acetylcholine, and the norepinephrine that your brain uses. Okay, and that's how it builds your thoughts. One of the problems with drug use, especially certain drugs, MDMA, cocaine, heroin, those like the real heavy hitters, they directly affect this part of your brain and that part of your brain. And after a while, they literally make it so they can't produce the right hormones anymore because they get hooked on the drug. So it relies on the drug for the boost that it needs, and those don't work right anymore. That's why it's so hard to go through withdrawals, because your brain can't do what it needs to do, and it's screaming for help.